All right, so this is the first recent reads of the new year. So we're gonna get into my past, present, and future of books. Most recently, I finished the book Lavender House by Lev A.C. Rosen. This is a mystery that takes place in 1952. I didn't really have a guess at who, well, okay. In the beginning, I had a guess at who I thought it would be. And then it's a murder mystery. And there's queer representation. There is this family called the Lamontaines. And they own a big soap company that has all these different wonderful floral scents. And the main woman who runs it gets murdered. Or they think she was murdered. And so Lavender House is a place where people are open and out and they don't have to worry about discrimination. Now, though, they face the issue with they may be keeping a murderer in by keeping everyone in there. So, it's a whodunit. As I said, I had a guess in the beginning of who I thought it was, but then 3/4 of the way through, it took me to think about who I thought it was again. And as you go through, like, everyone has a possible motive for murdering the person who was maybe murdered. It was a murder. It's a murder mystery. They bring in a detective to determine if she was murdered or not. And then once they've determined it, you gotta read it to find out who done it. I used to read a lot of mysteries when I was younger growing up, and it was a decent one. I liked it quite a bit. The other mystery I read recently was Jackal, which was like a horror mystery. It was fan-frickin-tastic. I cannot recommend Jackal enough by Erin E. Adams. Awesome book. So that's what I finished recently. What I'm currently reading is A Psalm for the Wild Build by Becky Chambers. This book I've heard so much about. This is another one Sin heard all the cool kids were reading it, and so she picked it up too. I would say, like, most of the time when people are talking about a book, most of the time, not all the time, the books usually end up being pretty good. So that's one of the ways I find my books. People, like, if I keep seeing it in my timelines, like, if I see it on social media, if I see it in freaking Instagram, I'm like, okay, I need to check this book out. And it's a shorty. I don't know, let's see how many pages this is. It's 147 pages, so short and sweet. I love me a short and sweet book. I will probably finish this today, to be honest. This book is about all these robots that used to be employed for work and in factories and whatever they did for society. One day, they just decided they wanted to up and leave and go out into the wilderness and just peace out once they became self-aware. So no one's seen the robots in years. The story focuses around this character's sibling, Dex, and they're a monk, and they decide that they want to stop being a garden monk and they want to be a tea monk. And what a tea monk is they set up shop and they serve tea and they listen to people's problems, you know, their stresses, their heartbreaks, their losses. Sibling Dex decides they want to just like learn as they go. The first experience is kind of like awkward and not so great and pretty awful. And then they eventually become just a really wonderful tea monk. At some point, I'm only just getting into it, so I don't know. We haven't met the robots yet. I don't know when they come into it, but from what I gather from reading the synopsis is that we're going to run into a robot, and the robots are going to say, hey, what do the humans need? And then we'll have a conversation about that and we'll see where it goes. But I'm very excited to get more into this. And then there'll be a standalone review for it in the futures. All right, and so other books I'm going to be reading soon that I picked up from Ye Old Library. So we got Stella Maris by Cormac McCarthy. I read The Passenger, and if you're interested, I'll put a link to my review down to that below. But this is the second book that comes after it. This one is much shorter. The Passenger was super long. Like, see, this one's like, I'm gonna guess it's like around 200 pages or something. Let's see. Yeah, it's 190. Another not super long one. The Passenger was a weird experience for me. I never read any Cormac McCarthy. It was like flailing around like I was drowning because I didn't know what was happening. It was just very chaotic, the experience of reading it. I was annoyed that I couldn't follow who was talking in the conversation until I just realized, you know what, just settle in and listen to the conversation. And it was more important what the subject matter was than who was saying what. And sometimes there's not always punctuation for certain things in there, so that was odd too. And then determining what was going on with the characters and trying to lace the story together, but eventually, you know, it starts out blurry and it all comes together. So this being the second part of it, I cannot wait to see what this brings. So let's have some story time with Sin, and we'll get the synopsis of this one, because I honestly haven't read it. I just picked it up because I wanted to keep going, because The Passenger was pretty great. I thought it was a fantastic read. Black River Falls, Wisconsin, 1972. Alicia Western, 20 years old, with $40,000 in a plastic bag. Sounds like a good time. But she admits herself to a hospital. A doctoral candidate in mathematics at the University of Chicago, Alicia has been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and she does not want to talk about her brother Bobby. Instead, she contemplates the nature of madness, the human insistence on the one common experience of the world. She recalls a childhood where, at age 7, her own grandmother feared her. She surveys the intersection of physics and philosophy, and she introduces her cohorts, her chimeras, the hallucinations that only she can see. All the while, she grieves for Bobby, not quite dead, not quite hers, told entirely through the transcripts of Alicia's psychiatric sessions. Stella Maris is a searching, rigorous, intellectually challenging coda to The Passenger. Alright then, that sounds awesome, and I really look forward to reading this. This is my next read. After we finish Song for the Wild Boat, we're gonna read Stella Maris. Alright, next up, I really enjoyed Nonfiction November, and I wanted to read some more nonfiction. So, picked up a book called Urban Foraging. I'm a big fan of books that have to do with nature and all sorts of stuff. This book, I believe, is a Michigan-based book. I have mentioned once or twice maybe that I'm from Michigan. This should tell me, in theory, what the native plants are and what we can forage, and I still would not forage mushrooms, though, without someone who knows their stuff, because I don't want to poison myself. I thought this would be really cool, because it's something I'm interested in. I'm super into nature. I love hiking. I love going outdoors. I like gardening. So when the next step naturally be foraging, or somewhere intertwined in there, you would think, I don't know. Let's hear a little bit about this book. Your city is full of wild food. Take a stroll to discover the ingredients for wild apple tart tatin. Turn the lilac bush found in a vacant lot into a delicious, delicately flavored jelly for your morning pastry. Well, that sounds kind of lovely. In this stylish, scrumptious guide to wild crafting in the city, you'll learn how to find, harvest, and cook with 50 common wild plants, such as chickweed, dandelion, echinacea, honeysuckle, red clover, and pine. Expert forager Lisa M. Rose shares all the basics necessary for successful foraging. Photos that help identification, gonna need those. Tips for ethical and safe gathering, and details on culinary uses. And simple recipes will help you make truly fresh, nutritious meals. So I thought that sounded pretty cool. Yeah, okay, so this is why I thought it was from Michigan. It says my family is from, not me, this is the lady in the book. She says her family's from Flint, Michigan, by the way of Calumet, Michigan. Before that, they were from Cornwall, England. Background in anthropology, professional focus on community health. Alright, so yeah, I think this will be a cool one. Looking forward to reading that. Urban Foraging by Lisa M. Rose. And then, okay, so I got this other book, and this was a super random one. My library moved all the new books, and now they're like on a wall. So they're all like displayed very nicely. And this one kind of caught my attention. It's so nice to be able to hold these books up. If this was a green screen, this greenish bluish color would be clear, and this book cover would look horrible if I held it up. This is exciting for me. I like being in the office. It's nice. The Magic Kingdom. And yes, it does kind of have to do with Disney. Storytime with Sin, let's go. In 1971, a property spectator named Harley Mann begins recording his life story onto a reel-to-reel machine. Reflecting on his childhood in the early 20th century, Harley recounts that after his father's sudden death, his family migrated down to Florida swamplands, mere miles away from what would become the world-famous Walt Disney World, to join a community of Shakers, led by Elder John, a generous man with a mysterious past. The colony devoted itself to labor, faith, and charity, rejecting all temptations that lay beyond the properties. I mean, Shakers kind of weird. Religious sect, kind of cult-like, just saying. Anyway, okay. Though this way of life initially saved Harley and his family from complete ruin, when Harley begins falling in love with Sadie Pratt, a consumptive patient living on the grounds, his loyalty to the Shakers and their conservative worldview grew strained and ultimately broke. Well, you don't say. As Harley dictates the story across more than half a century, meditating on his youth, Florida's ever-changing landscape, and the search for an American utopia, the truth about Sadie, Elder John, and the Shakers comes to light, clarifying the past and present alike. A dazzling tapestry of love, faith, memory, and imagination. The Magic Kingdom questions what it means to look back and accept one's place in history. Okay, so maybe it's not like focused on Disney, but it mentioned it. That's why I thought. But I thought that sounded interesting, so I thought I'd give it a whirl. That was a totally random one, and we'll see how that goes. Yeah, I've heard nothing about it. I haven't seen anything about it. I guess maybe because they had the word magic in it. Like, what are the things that draw us in? Magic, ghosts, weird spooky stuff. I don't know. Sometimes I like a cover or a title and it just draws me to it and I'm like, all right. And then I always know that if I don't like it, if I read however much and I'm not enjoying the style of writing or where it's going, I can always DNF. If you don't like it, DNF that MF. Why put yourself through something that's an unpleasant experience? Don't do it. Just cut it off. So if you guys are fans of videos where I talk about multiple books that I am reading, the next video coming up will be another video about multiple books that I have read. So stick around, check it out, and if you had fun hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.